Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House suspend the rules and pass House Resolution 120.
The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 120, resolution recognizing the African American spiritual as a national treasure.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the African American spiritual as a national treasure. From 1619 to 1865, enslaved African Americans created their own unique form of expression known today as spirituals. Calvin Earl, a noted performer and educator of African American spirituals, stated that the lyrics used in spirituals became a metaphor for freedom from slavery, and they were a secret way for slaves to, quote, communicate with each other, teach their young, record their history, and heal their pain, unquote.
Gentlewoman from California.
Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to recognize the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Mr. Laurel, for 5 minutes.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of legislation that would recognize the African American spiritual as a national treasure, and would like to say thank you to my colleague from Georgia, Mr. Lewis, with whom I introduced this legislation in the Congress. Mr. Speaker, even though they spring from one of the darkest periods of our nation's history, a period of turmoil that Americans still live with to this day, as we all know, African American spirituals have inspired many of America's most remarkable and enduring musical accomplishments. Name the modern music form, and it owes a debt to the spiritual. Jazz, blues, rock and roll, gospel, all trace their origins to this particular musical heritage. The African American spiritual is as poignant and powerful a genre of music as any in history. Today, African American spirituals are not only performed in churches and concert halls across the world, they are also studied by sociologists and musicologists across the country. And in much the same spirit of the Fisk Jubilee Singers, I want to say thank you to a good friend, a musicologist himself, for bringing to my attention the need for the Congress to honor this vital piece of our national heritage, Calvin Earl. As the youngest of 9 children in North Carolina, Calvin taught himself the guitar at age 7, forming his first rhythm and blues group while serving in the Army, before spending several decades performing jazz and big band music. Since 1989, Calvin has dedicated himself to preserving and sharing spirituals with a new generation of Americans. Traveling the country, he builds on the traditional words and melodies to illuminate the history and complexity of this unique art form. I thank all who have allowed us to bring this resolution for consideration today. I urge my colleagues to support honoring this national treasure and this timeless reminder of the enduring human spirit.
Gentlewoman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to recognize the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Siris, for 2 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thanks.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 120, which recognizes the African American spiritual as a national treasure. Enslaved Africans who came to the European colonies were forbidden to speak their native languages, use African musical instruments, or practice their spiritual beliefs. To keep their African traditions alive through songs and stories, the slaves created a new kind of music. Today, these are known as spirituals. Mr. Calvin Earl, my constituent from Jersey City, has devoted his entire life to educating people about the history and the importance of African American spirituals. He started a program called The Gifts from My Ancestors. Through songs, dances, and storytelling, this program has helped people experience the story of enslaved African Americans. Mr. Speaker, I commend Mr. Earl for his work, and I believe it is time to recognize the importance of these spirituals, preserve them for future generations by voting in favor of H.R. 120. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The gentlewoman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to close on House Resolution 120.
I'm gonna lay down my burdens down by the riverside. Ain't gonna study, oh no.